used to and would for talking about the past. What are the differences between these two constructions? Are there any differences? Let's find out in this week's episode of Master English with Tim, the podcast where every Monday Tim teaches you English vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation that builds a bridge from B2 to C1 English, and always in depth and detail, and without ever hurrying. Okay, so let's answer our question from the beginning of the episode. The answer is yes, there are important differences between used to and would. One key difference between used to and would is the type of verbs that we can use them with. In English, we have two types or categories of verbs. These two categories are action verbs and stative verbs. If you want to use used to and would correctly, then you really need to understand the difference between action verbs and stative verbs. So let's invest some time in understanding them right now. Let's start with action verbs. We use action verbs to talk about actions. For example, run, jump, talk, make, try, swim, fall, sleep, and work are all action verbs. Okay, that's all for action verbs. And on the other hand, we have stative verbs, which we use to talk about long-term characteristics of things, about mental work, and the senses. Let's look at each of those separately. Let's listen now to 3 examples of stative verbs about long-term characteristics of things, each with an example sentence after it. 1. Weigh. I weigh 70 kilograms. 2. Smell. The flowers smell so good. 3rd and last. Stand. The Eiffel Tower stands 330 meters tall. So weigh, smell, and stand. Those are, of course, not the only ones, but all 3 of those verbs talk about long-term characteristics of things, and they're all stative verbs. We also have stative verbs that talk about mental work. Now listen to 3 more examples of stative verbs, this time about mental work, again, each with an example sentence after it. 1. Believe. I really hope the police believe me. 2. Understand. Tomas understands English well. 3rd and last. Think. Don't worry, we all think you did a great job. Okay, now let's do a few examples of stative verbs for talking about the senses. 1. Smell. I smell smoke. 2. Hear. Do you hear a baby crying? 3. Feel. Everyone felt sick after hearing your story. If you want to learn more about stative verbs in more detail, then listen to episode 109, a deep look at stative verbs. Okay, now that we have talked about action and stative verbs, we are ready to talk directly about used to and would. Let's start with used to. And in case you didn't know it, used to is spelled like this. U-S-E-D space T-O. Used to. We say used to when we want to talk about past actions that are finished. For example, if someone says, I used to live in Chicago, that person lived in Chicago in the past and does not live there now. If someone says, we used to go out and party before we had kids, then those people went out and partied before, but in their life now, they do not go out and they do not party. We can say used to with both types of verbs, action verbs and stative verbs. Listen now to 5 examples, first with action verbs. 1. Tamara used to drink 5 cups of coffee every day. So, did Tamara drink 5 cups of coffee in the past every day? Yes, that action happened in the past. And right now, in the present, does she continue to drink 5 cups of coffee every day if we say she used to do that? The answer is no. So Tamara used to drink 5 cups of coffee every day. That means she did that in the past, and currently she does not drink 5 cups. Okay, number 2. We used to play badminton in the backyard. So, When did that action of playing badminton happen? In the past, and only in the past. It does not happen now. It stopped happening. 3. I used to read electronic books, but now I read only paper ones. So I think you're getting the idea now. I used to read electronic books. That means that happened in the past. It does not happen now. 4. Matt used to run 3 times a week, but he stopped because he has kids. 5th and last. It used to rain much more during the summer. Okay, now listen to some examples with stative verbs. 5 of them. 1. People used to think that the earth was flat. So in the past that happened, and now generally it doesn't. Of course you have a few people who think it's flat and they're kind of crazy, but well, that is not true anymore generally. Example number 2. Boris used to understand English well. So in the past he understood English and now he does not. He used to understand English well. 3. Chris used to weigh over 100 kilos. So, in the past, he weighed maybe 103 or 104, and now he does not weigh that much. He weighs maybe 95 or something. 4. The whole area around the factory used to smell terrible. So, it smelled terrible before, and now it does not. 5th and last. I used to hear voices inside my head, but then I started taking medicine. Okay, now you have heard some examples of used to with both action verbs and with stative verbs. But all 10 of those examples were positive statements. But we also need to know how to make other sentence types with used to, especially negative statements. Used to is not an auxiliary verb, so when we make negative statements with used to, we have to add the auxiliary verb did. Let's do just one example right now. Food and clothes didn't used to cost so much in the past. Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions about the meaning of this sentence. Let me just read it one more time. Food and clothes didn't used to cost so much in the past. So, first question. According to the sentence, did food and clothes cost a lot in the past? Think about it for a second. So the answer is no. Food and clothes did not cost a lot in the past. And okay, before I ask the second question, please listen to the sentence again. Food and clothes didn't used to cost so much. So the second question is, do food and clothes cost a lot now? I'll give you a second to think about it. The answer is yes, food and clothes do cost a lot now. This is the part that a lot of people don't understand about didn't used to. When we say someone didn't used to do action X or Y or Z, then that action did not happen in the past, and in the present, that action does happen. This maybe is a little confusing, so listen please to 3 more examples. 1. You didn't used to wear bright colors. So question, in the past, did this person wear bright colors? The answer is no, they did not. Listen to the sentence again. You didn't used to wear bright colors. So clearly the person in the past did not do that. What about now? Does the person wear bright colors now in the present? Answer is yes. So with didn't used to, the action did not happen in the past, and now currently it does happen. Number 2, it didn't used to get so hot in the summer. So in the past, did it get very hot in the summer? No, it did not. Does it get hot in the summer now? Yes, it does. 3rd and last, James didn't used to work on the weekends. So, in the past, did James work on the weekends? No, he didn't. Does he work on the weekends now? Yes, he does. Okay, we have one more small detail about didn't used to. So, how do you write didn't used to? More specifically, do you put a letter D or not put a letter D at the end of use in didn't used to? Think about it for a second. The answer is no, we do not put a letter D there. This is actually something that confuses even a lot of native speakers, and I admit that I did this wrong for a while, even myself. But now I know that we don't put a D there, and I hope you remember it also. And okay, I have great news for you right now. We are finished talking about used to. Now let's move on to our other construction that we can use for talking about long-term or repeated actions in the past. That construction is the very common verb would. The most common, most familiar meaning or use of would is to make polite requests. For example, I would like another cup of coffee, please. We can also use would to talk about imaginary situations, things that do not happen in real life. For instance, if I had $1 billion, I would run more, bike more, and read more. So, in addition to those two common uses of would, we also have the less common meaning of talking about repeated actions in the past that do not happen anymore. Let me give you an example. Listen closely because I'm going to ask you some test questions after you listen. Ready? When we were kids, we would spend hours playing outside. So, a few questions. The first question is, when did the action of playing outside happen? In the past or in the present? Okay, that's an easy one, of course. The action happened in the past. Second question, did the action happen just once in the past or often? The answer is often. Final question, does the action of playing outside happen often now? The answer is no. That action is finished. And this again is what would means. Happened often in the past and does not happen now. So you need to understand two details about this meaning of would. The first detail is that because would has several different meanings, and the meaning of repeated actions in the past is a less common meaning of would, we often add words, phrases, or even entire short sentences that say clearly that the action happened in the past. Some examples of these words, phrases, and sentences are earlier, in the past, back in those days, in the 90s, in the past, when we were kids, when I was in school, when we were young, and so on. Listen now to 5 examples of sentences with would and some of these constructions that underline that something happened in the past and not in the present. 1. We would always spend our money in the candy store after school. 2. In the 90s, people would still read paper newspapers as their main source of information. 3. When they were kids, they would often play basketball in the park. 4. Back then, everyone watched the same television shows. 5th and last, when we were at university, we would party till morning and then go to class the next morning feeling fine. Now, in all of those examples, you could hear only action verbs, no stative verbs. And in fact, the second detail to know about would is that we use would typically only with action verbs, not with stative verbs. Okay, there are some exceptions to this rule, and I do love details, but I think for now, let's just stay with the generalization that would and stative verbs don't go well together. Okay, that is all for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and see you all next Monday.